All right, welcome back. You're listening to The Mark Moss Show. We're talking about the decentralized revolution, talking about the way the world's changing, of course, each and every week, from a centralized world of globalism and centralization to a world of decentralization. And it's happening before our eyes. Of course, we look at it through the lens of politics, finance, and technology. We're covering all of those so you can have context to what's going. And we're looking at some of the latest breaking news this week. Some of the big news has been dominating all the headlines. You've been seeing it all over the place. And I'm going to give you a different perspective on it. But some of this news that we've been seeing coming out is, of course, from the big meetings in the World Economic Forum that's been going on. And they've been talking about a lot of things. We've already talked about a lot of this stuff. But one of the things that I keep seeing coming out over and over and over, and I think it's one of the most important things coming on, is this continued pounding the table on disinformation. Disinformation, over and over and over. And they're calling for censorship, they're calling for control, they're calling for power because they want to stop this misinformation or this disinformation that we suffer from. As a matter of fact, New York Times publisher A.G. Sulzberger described disinformation as, quote, the most existential problem the world is facing today. That's the biggest problem the world's facing today. Not the nuclear war that's about to happen, Russia's threatening, not the nuclear war, not the potential nuclear war with China and Taiwan, not the UN said 1 billion people will starve to death potentially in the next 2 years. None of that. That's not a problem. No. The biggest problem that the world is facing today is disinformation, apparently. CNN host Brian Stelter was a host for some of the panels of the World Economic Forum, and basically sat there, and of course he's a fan of this. He's previously called for censorship under what he called a, quote, harm reduction model, and he led this panel on how Democrats could reshape the news. So he's a news guy for CNN. Now, I'll let you know that CNN's host, Brian Stelter, is no stranger to this information. As a matter of fact, he's been confronted, accused, and actually substantiated that he has been disseminated his own false stories many times. Many times. So it's kind of ironic for him to be sitting there hosting these panels where they're talking about disinformation being the most existential problem the world is facing today. Sulzberger insisted that disinformation is the reason why, I can't say it without laughing. Sulzberger insisted that the disinformation is the reason why there's a loss of trust today. He ignores his own history in eroding that trust in the media through flagrantly biased decisions of the New York Times. So never mind that I lied to you over and over, and never mind that people found out I was lying to you and so you don't trust me anymore. That's not the reason why. The reason why there's a loss of trust today is because of disinformation. And if you believe that, then maybe I have a bridge to sell you. Look, we know that humans naturally gravitate towards freedom and truth, right? We know that the truth is always found out. We know that the truth will set you free. Humans are smart enough to know the truth. The truth, it must be found through open, honest discussion and dialogue. The truth is found through transparency. But they're saying the reason why there's no trust is because of disinformation. No. The reason why there's no trust is because of constant lies. The reason why there's no trust is because there's no transparency. The panel that they had was titled "A Clear and Present Danger of Disinformation," which is pretty interesting. On it, the European Commissioner Vera Jover was on there, and she was talking about how in the United States, there is going to be new laws based off of disinformation. Now, I don't know how a politician from Europe has any say over what would happen inside of the United States, but yet here we are. They want to say that disinformation and the broader set of misinformation, of conspiracy, propaganda, and clickbait, the mix of bad information, it's corrupting information ecosystem, and what it attacks is trust. The problem is what is misinformation? What is disinformation? And how and who verifies that? Now, there's some things that are factual, sure, right? 2 plus 2 is 4, although in schools they want to tell you 2 plus 2 is 5. So what is fact anymore? But there are things that are fact. A lot of things are just information. A lot of things are opinion. What is hate speech? People saying mean things? What if my daughter hates chocolate ice cream and I talk about chocolate ice cream, but she hates chocolate ice cream? Is that hate speech? I know that's a little bit silly, but where does that line get drawn? Who draws that stance? Well, apparently they want to draw that line. One of the biggest proponents of cracking down on disinformation was New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. A couple months ago, she went to the UN she made this whole presentation to the UN of why the entire world needs to crack down on disinformation and how we need to put in we need to take away the ability for people to use the web anonymously, and we need this global cooperation to stop this problem. Interesting enough, at the same time as the WEF is having this meeting calling for more of this, she all of a sudden unexpectedly announces her resignation. I'll clap for that. We'll go ahead and clap for that. She is one of the best known and longest faces for globalism, especially when it comes to totalitarian governments. I think she was trying to win the award of being the most like Hitler, probably through the 2020 pandemic. There's been a bunch of articles that I've seen have come out where they've shown pictures of her like the day that she was elected into office and what she looks like now. It looks like she's aged like 20 years. Is it because of the guilt that she feels? Is it because of the evil is wearing her out? Has it been too much on her? Is that why she's stepping down? We don't know. I find it interesting. I find it encouraging at the same time. You know, what I like to look at. I like to look at the cause and effect here. Right? Each force has an equal and opposite reaction. So the more governments tend to squeeze, the more people tend to push back. And the more they push back is the more the governments have to squeeze. And the more they squeeze, the more people push back. And so it's apparently been too much for her. She's decided to step down. Is that a good thing? Well, I guess we'll find out when the next person gets elected. We'll see who's next after that. I also saw this article from the WEF that says that NGOs, non-government organizations, quote, must hit back against right-wing groups that weaken public trust in them. Don't take it, they say. Don't take it. So a World Economic Forum panelist said that NGOs, non-government organizations, must hit back against right-wing groups that weaken public trust in them. I think they do that on their own. I don't think they need any right-wing groups to weaken trust in them. They do that on their own by being caught lying, by trying to force policies that people don't want, by hiding transparency. I think they do that all on their own. Richard Edelman, he's the CEO of global communications firm Edelman. He spoke Tuesday at the event in Davos, Switzerland, during a panel about disrupting trust. And he said that the recent sadness he's endured has been the deterioration of trust. Oh, boo-hoo. My hypothesis on that is right-wing groups have done a really good job of disenfranchising NGOs, he said. They're challenging the funding sources they've associated with Bill Gates and George Soros. They said that you're world people as opposed to actually what you are, which is local. So they've challenged the funding sources, Bill Gates and George Soros. Yes, we have. We've looked at George Soros, we've looked at Bill Gates, and we've looked at their funding sources. Not their funding sources, but what they've done with their money. You don't want to be associated with those people, then you shouldn't be associated with those people. You know, I saw some big news this week that I thought was pretty big. It was regarding the Bitcoin cryptocurrency space overall. And a report came out, a research paper at the digital assets firm, and they say how Circle and Uniswap can solve a $2 trillion FX risk problem. What are they talking about? Circle, as you may know, is a US dollar-backed stablecoin. Uniswap is a decentralized exchange. So how does Circle and Uniswap solve a $2 trillion risk problem? What's the big deal? A lot of people, you're going to hear people all over, not you of course, but you're going to hear other people tell you that what does Bitcoin, what use case does Bitcoin have? What do we need cryptocurrency for? All of those things. But here we can see that it can solve a $2 trillion problem. That's a pretty big problem. How big of a problem does your business solve? Probably not 2 trillion. So what am I talking about here? Well, every day about $2.2 trillion in foreign exchange, FX, foreign exchange transactions happen. And those foreign transactions, those FX transactions carry a risk that the yet to be settled side of the agreement won't meet its obligation. So every single time that transaction is made, there's a risk that the other side won't settle their transaction. But this research paper that came out from Circle, talking about Circle and Uniswap, finds that a distributed ledger could solve that problem with simultaneous settlement. You see, Bitcoin is trustless. When you deal with Bitcoin, you don't have to trust another third party. You can have instantaneous settlement, and that's exactly what they're talking about. And so using a combination of Bitcoin and a stablecoin and a decentralized exchange, we could send money through these FX markets instantly, for free, nearly free, and without a counterparty. No counterparty risk, without the risk of the other side not meeting their obligation. As a matter of fact, we can see that there's $30 billion a year of cross-border remittances happening. So people from Central America move up to the United States, they get a job, they send money back home. They send money all over the world back to their people at home, their family at home where they don't have enough money. $30 billion a year in cross-border remittances. Now maybe you don't know how this works, so let me fill you in. If I have a family member in somewhere in another part of the world, for example. Now, depends on where they're at in the world. For example, if they're in Afghanistan, I may not be able to send them money because the Taliban might intercept it before they even get it. So that's a problem if I send it through the normal banking system or money remittance system. If they're in, let's say, El Salvador, for example, I would have to get in a car and drive to my bank and stand in line and pull out cash. That could take 30, 40 minutes easy. Then I have to drive to the grocery store or Walmart, stand in line at Western Union, fill out the forms to send the money. That's another 30 minutes, let's say. So round trip, it takes me an hour and a half, and it's a lot of hassle. Then in El Salvador, they need to go to the Western Union or whatever to get the money. So now they got to hop on a bus, and they got to go 2, 3, 4 hours on a bus to this nearest town where they have a Western Union or money remittance office. And then they have to get the cash. And then they have to get back on the bus and ride 3 or 4 hours back with cash, with a good chance they get robbed with an entire day out of their way. So here we have hours on my end, a day on their end, the risk of getting robbed, and on top of that, potentially 20 to 30% in fees that they have to pay. Doesn't sound like a very good system, does it? Using Bitcoin, stable coins, we could just transfer them that instantly and for basically free. And I could do it from my bed in my underwear. I wouldn't have to go anywhere. I wouldn't have to stand in line. It wouldn't cost me any money. The receiving end could receive that money immediately without having to ride a bus, without having to get risk of being stolen, and without having to give 20, 30% up. Now that's in El Salvador. Again, back in Afghanistan, they can't even get it at all because most likely the Taliban will steal that money before they even get it. But using Bitcoin or stablecoin, I could transfer them the money directly to them without anybody able to to intercept that transaction. This is a big deal, and this is exactly what this research paper is saying. That's a $2 trillion problem. Now look, I say it all the time, we get paid for the value we provide. So if you can solve a bigger problem that affects more people, you get more money for it. If you can solve a $2 trillion problem that affects a big majority of the world, that's a very valuable solution. But why does Bitcoin have any value? What purpose does Bitcoin have? What utility does it have? I don't even know why we need it. You may not. You may not. To the 4 billion people living under harsh authoritarian regimes that have money trying to be sent to them on a regular basis, they understand, they care, and there's value. That's a pretty big deal. It's a good paper that just came out. But while we have positive progress on one side, we have negative progress on the other. We saw the Justice Department, the Department of Justice of the United States, they made an announcement of an announcement. They came out this week and said, we're going to have a big announcement. It's always so stupid when people make an announcement of an announcement. But that's what they did. Finally, we had the announcement came out, and it was major international crypto enforcement action. The department held a press conference basically saying that there was a major international cryptocurrency enforcement action happening, and they were cracking down on a crypto exchange called Bitslato, because they laundered, apparently, allegedly, laundered $700 million of laundering, and they potentially, allegedly, had ties to illicit Russian finance. So the Department of Justice made this big deal, global cooperation, an announcement, held a big press conference. They went in and they arrested the founder of Bitslato, cuffed him, made a big spectacle of it, hauled him in, arrested him, made this big press release because allegedly they laundered about $700 million, allegedly for some Russians. Allegedly. We'll see. But this is being prosecuted by the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. Now, I want to bring this into light because there was something known as the FinCEN files that were released. I've talked about it before on the show. And so there was this massive reporting project, sweeping revelations about some of the roles some of the biggest banks in the world used in facilitating international money laundering. There was 400 journalists that participated in this research, 88 countries. They were nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. This is like the legit deal. 5 global banks, JP Morgan Chase, HSBC, Standard Chartered Bank, Deutsche Bank, and Bank of New York Mellon, continue to profit from suspect transactions even after they paid fines to the U.S. They used the laws that were intended to stop them, but instead it allowed them to flourish. We can see that the banks moved over $2 trillion. $2 trillion they laundered in transactions and that were flagged by financial institutions. That included $514 billion at JP Morgan and $1.3 trillion at Deutsche Bank. They laundered for illegal operations with known Russians, $2 trillion. And who was handcuffed? Who was marched out? What press release was there? $2 trillion is okay, but $700 million? We're going to make a big deal about it? I bring that to your attention. You can tell who the state's trying to protect by how they prosecute crimes. If it's a crime against the people or it's a crime against themselves. I'll let you be the decider of that. Some of the news that I saw this week that really caught my eye is in the money system itself. And really, we're looking at money, finance, and of course, technology. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is something that's really reshaping the world. I saw this week that Russia is working with Iran on creating a gold-backed stablecoin. So we have stablecoins that are typically pegged or backed by dollars. So certain companies like Circle, for example, Tether, for example, I give them $1, they give me back a token that represents $1. At any given time, I could give them back the token and they give me back my dollar. Now that's how the dollar and the gold were supposed to work. I put my gold into a bank. The bank gave me a token, a certificate back. And then whenever I want, I can give that certificate back. I get my gold back. That's not how it works anymore, but they're trying to return back to that type of a system where I give them gold, they give me a token. I could use that token wherever I want. And at any given time, I could redeem that token back for gold. Now, the reason why this is important is because Russia and Iran are starting to be some major players in the world, especially when it comes to energy. Lots of countries in the world want their energy, and so by providing this gold-backed token, they could really help facilitate global trade a lot faster. It says the token will be used as a means of payment in foreign trade settlements instead of the dollar, because of course, Russia can't use the dollar. Russia has been sanctioned. Iran's been sanctioned. So all these nations are sanctioned, but they're not just going to die. They're going to continue to do trade. They just have to do it in something other than the dollar. And so here they have something they've created on their own, a gold-backed token. It says that the Russian ruble or the Iranian rial could be settled with that instead of the dollar. Now, this is part of the Russian Cryptocurrency Blockchain Association that's trying to push this through. And we've seen other gold stablecoins already before. This isn't something new. Paxos Gold has one. It's the largest backed stablecoin on the market with 512 million market capitalization. Tether, which is the largest stablecoin, they also have what's called Tether Gold. It's the first gold-backed stablecoin, and they have a market cap of 471 million. So we have almost about $1 billion in gold-backed stablecoins just with those two alone right there. while this seems okay, it seems kind of cool. If you're a gold guy, I kind of get why you would kind of like it. The reality is, it's still a big problem, in my opinion. Going back to a gold standard, like a sound money supply, sounds good. The problem is that who holds the gold? That's the problem. So we're going to have a gold-backed stablecoin. I'm going to give you $1. I'm going to give you gold. You're going to give me back a token, and you should be able to give me back my gold when I want it. But who holds the gold? How do I know if they really have it? How do I know it's not fake gold? How do I know that they'll give it to me if I ask for it? Now I wasn't alive, Americans trusted that the US government and the US banking system would hold their gold and not lie about how much gold they have and would give them their gold back when they wanted. But in 1933, they found out the hard way that wasn't the case. Under Executive Order 6102, they seized all the gold. They made it illegal for you to own gold. Why? The reason why is because they lied about how much gold they had. They printed way too many of these paper gold certificates, and they needed the gold, so they had to steal everybody's. So we can go to another system like that, where we have another gold-backed token system. Instead of paper, now it's a token. It's the same thing. The problem is who are we trusting? We're trusting the Chinese, we're trusting the Russians, we're trusting somebody to hold that gold, not lie or manipulate how much they have, and we're trusting them to give it back to us when we want it. But, if I've touched the stove one time and burned my hand, I probably don't want to touch the stove again. Why would I want to trust another gold-backed system that's already been known to fail? And of course, the answer is I wouldn't, which is why I don't really see this as being a good solution. Potentially a temporary solution, but not a good long-term solution. Some other tech news I saw this week, we saw TikTok, which is potentially on its way to being banned in the United States. I don't have enough of an opinion one way or another. Apparently, it's a big spy network for the CCP, Communist Chinese Party. Apparently, they're using it to dumb down the people in the United States. In China, they only show them good, educational, uplifting content. But in the US, they show them horrible, degrading, dumbing down content, apparently. On top of that, they turn everybody's phone into a spy network phone, which is why I believe all members of the government now are banned from installing TikTok on their phone. Under President Trump, they tried to ban TikTok and make it illegal for United States citizens, and it's still being kicked around. Of course, TikTok, the Chinese company, doesn't want to be banned. They probably want to continue spying on people. I do have a TikTok account, by the way. So if you're on TikTok, go ahead and give me a follow. Just search Mark Moss on TikTok. I do not have TikTok installed on my phone, however. So I let my team deal with that. I haven't looked into it enough, but I'm not taking the risk. However, TikTok says that they've changed their ways. They want to be better. They want to comply. They want to make sure that they are transparent. They want to make sure that they are trustworthy. And so they've proposed a $1.5 billion plan to U.S. lawmakers to ease their national security concerns. So apparently they want to spend $1.5 billion to increase transparency. They want to reorganize how it operates in the United States, and so they can address these national security concerns. So we'll see if that happens. These are tricky situations, right? They're tricky situations. It's like we're supposed to be the land of the free. I should be free to download an app and use it if I want. The U.S. government shouldn't get involved and tell me what I can and can't have on my phone. On the same time, I suppose the government should be protecting us from, harm. They should be protecting us from foreign invasion, from sure. Is spying through our phones, is that a national security breach? I don't know. These are tough questions that I don't have the answers for. But I do think it's interesting that they're trying to spend this money to see if they can stay in the country. So we'll see how that plays out. In other news that I saw this week that I thought was very interesting is something I haven't quite talked about here much on the radio. What's happening with this ChatGPT. Now, I did do a video on my main YouTube channel talking about OpenAI and ChatGPT. So if you want to know my whole thought process on this, and including very specific ways on how you can use it, including prompts and so forth, check out my main YouTube channel, Mark Moss, and just look at that video I did on ChatGPT. You'll find it on AI. But I think what's interesting is that Microsoft is betting really, really, really big on this. They've invested already a few $1 billion. They're trying to invest another $10 billion into this OpenAI. And the thing with OpenAI, or any AI for that matter, is it's only as good as the information that it's been fed. And so all it does is it learns from its experiences, what it's been fed, just like anybody learns, right? If your kid has only grown up in this area and only ever known this, then that's all they can draw experiences from, which is part of the reason why we should continue to broaden our horizons and read books and so forth. But who controls the AI? Who's the one that's fed it the information? What type of information has been given? Is it right-leaning? Is it left-leaning? Is it woke? Is it not woke? And these are all important questions. If everybody's using this AI to write content, to write articles, to write blogs, to be experts, but it was all written from one viewpoint, how does that start to shift the world? These are important questions that need to be figured out, and it doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy inside to see Bill Gates' Microsoft wanting to be the largest shareholder. As a matter of fact, if they get the $10 billion in, they'll be approximately 50% owners of the OpenAI. You know, a couple of things I saw this week talking about this decentralized revolution, talking about how centralization continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Rothbard framed it up in his book called The State. And in the book, The State, which, by the way, is a booklet, and you can read it in about an hour, and I think you can buy it on Amazon for like $5 or $6. You could probably download it for free on Mises.org, MISES.org, or you can buy it on Amazon for $5, $6. I would highly recommend you read it. It's $5 or $6. It's an hour's worth of your time. But he talks about the state. What is the state? And he says that the state, first of all, the state is nothing. We are individuals. Collectively, as individuals, we're the state. But the state is nothing on its own. It's just a collection of individuals. But he says that the state, once it starts to grow, the goal and the purpose of the state is to get bigger. The goal and the purpose of the state is to protect itself and defend itself. And again, always get bigger. What's the purpose of a business? To grow. What's the purpose of a state? To grow. And so as the state continues to grow, it continues to become more oppressive. You hire lawmakers. What do lawmakers do? Oh, that's right, they make laws. Well, if they're doing a good job, they have to be making laws, right? So we get more and more laws. The state has to get more oppressive until the point where they control every single aspect of your life. Arbitrary laws, stupid laws, laws that don't even make any sense, but they're lawmakers. So in order to do their job, they got to make laws. And so we saw this week some of the big news that were going around. Two big ones that were just insane is the Biden admin's war on gas stoves. Yeah, gas stoves. Are you kidding me? Like, they don't want us to have an open flame to cook on anymore. I believe the oldest way in the history of the world that we've ever cooked was on fire. And we still use fire today. I believe, I'm not a chef, but I believe that cooking on fire is still the best way to cook today. My grill uses fire, and my stove uses fire. My wife hates the electric stove because it doesn't get hot enough, it doesn't heat up fast enough, and it's not efficient. We have natural gas. It's natural, it's abundant, and it's cheap. Gas seems to be the best way to cook on a flame. Now, I'm not going to sit here and talk about the technical differences of electric versus heat flame. I don't really care about that. The point that I want to make here is if you have a government that wants to get so big, they want to tell you what type of heat you can cook your food over, that government has gotten too big. That's the point. Now, I don't care what their reasoning is, and I've seen a bunch of different reasonings. You got AOC saying it's because that the gas flame is bad for you. Okay. Well, heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and that's mostly because of our food. We could talk about the glyphosate, we could talk about the GMOs, we could talk about the pesticides on our food that are killing people. Oh, no, let's not talk about that. Let's just talk about the gas being bad. They're talking about it's for the environment. Look, again, I'm not here to debate the intricacies of gas versus electric heat. I'm not here to talk about the intricacies of is it good or bad? Is it good or bad? Is it better or worse for your health than glyphosate sprayed on our foods? What I am saying is that if you have a government that wants to tell you what type of heat you're allowed to use for your food, that government is too big. And it's not just in the United States. I saw this week, we saw in Britain, The British food czar, they have a food czar. So just like in the United States, under Obama's first presidency, he appointed these czars, industry czars. These are non-elected individuals who basically are the administrative state that take over every single industry. So your vote, to vote in a representative, to go vote on your behalf, means nothing, because he appointed administrative state, these czars that have the power over each one of these. Well, Britain also has the same thing. So Britain has a food czar. And the Britain food czar says that they want to have a cake ban at the office. Yeah, a cake ban. Meaning it would be illegal for you in Britain to bring cake with you to the office. Now, I know a lot of times I don't eat a lot of sweets. So a lot of times, we'll get a gift basket, we'll get cookies, we'll get, we'll have a cake, whatever. Oh, take it to the office. Maybe people will eat it, right? They want to ban that. They say that it compares to the same as smoking in the office. So by bringing a cake to the office would be the same as smoking in the office. It says that Professor Susan Jebb, chairwoman of the Food Standards Agency, why we even have that, I don't know, FSA, said that she only eats cake during the day because colleagues give her the opportunity to do so. She then called on office workers to refrain from the practice to help the fight against obesity. So the professor, Susan Jebb, who's the chairwoman of FSA, Food Standard Agency, the person who's making decisions, is admitting, so she's responsible for policy over food, and she's admitting that she has no control over her own body. She has no personal agency. And she says, quote, only eats cake because colleagues give her the opportunity to do so. How dare those colleagues be willing to share stuff with her? How dare they offer her those things? And she has no agency on her own. And so because she has no agency, she needs to pass laws to protect you because you also have no agency. You see, that's how this works. All of these laws are really a projection. Because they're insecure, because they're dumb, lazy, stupid, or fat, or whatever, because they have no self-control, they need to pass laws they wish they had on themselves because they have no control, and they want to pass them on you. Have you seen what the health ministers look like? Have you seen what the health ministers of the US and other countries look like? Have you seen what the health ministers of the counties look like? It became pretty widely known throughout the COVID pandemic. They are all atrocious. I would not take health advice from any one of these people. Just like her. Who is she, the chairwoman of the Food Standard Agency, admitting here that she only eats cake because people bring it to her and they give her the opportunity to do so. And now she wants to make a law so people are not allowed to bring cake to the office anymore. Now look, this is one of those things where you have to think even further. So, you know what? I guess there's no reason people need to bring cake to the office, right? I mean, that's like dessert food. I mean, well, maybe on birthdays. Should we bring cake on birthdays? Okay, only on birthdays. But whose birthday? Only managers or employees? Okay, you know what? How about just no cake at all? Can we all go to a work party afterwards to celebrate a birthday? Could there be cake there? Well, and if it's not cake, then what other types of food? Well, what about food that has a lot of butter or salt? Should we ban stuff with butter? What about if it has high fat? Should we also ban that? Okay, how about we only allow cricket protein then? Like, where does this go? When they start telling you what type of food you can and can't bring to the office, I mean, again, back to the same as discussing the gas stove. I don't want to get into the fact of when you should have cake or shouldn't have cake or what type of heat you should be cooking your food on. The point is, when you have a government that wants to tell you what type of heat you should be cooking your food on or what type of food you can and cannot bring to your own office, you have a government that's gotten too big. It's easy to see that we are at peak centralization. World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, UN, IMF, BIS. The UK says you can't bring cake to the office, and Biden says you can't cook on gas anymore. We have a problem, and it's time to push back. And that's why the world is changing, and we're going back into a world of decentralization. It's happening. We can see the signs everywhere. The stricter they are grasping onto power, the more pushback we have. And as long as we keep pushing back on this decrepit and corrupt system, we're going to win. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Mark Moss Show. I've been talking about the decentralized revolution, running through the latest breaking news headlines of the week. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that gives you some clarity of where the world is going. And I appreciate you taking the time. If you've missed any of it, catch me on the podcast. Just search The Mark Moss Show or find me on YouTube at Market Disruptors. And that's what I got. Thanks for listening.